Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. We're letting everybody sort of get into the webinar. Well, good morning and welcome to South Florida Trade Trends. My name is Ken Roberts. If you don't know me, I'm the president of WorldCity. 5 times a month, I contribute a column to Forbes.com. I serve 2 3-year terms on the Federal Reserve Trade and Transportation Advisory Board. Our main task for those 6 years was to try to figure out how to get inflation above 2%. By the time I left, we still had not accomplished it, but I believe we've now figured that one out. I also speak around the country to Fortune 500 companies, national trade associations, local trade associations, historically in person, but lately it's been a lot of a mixture, but a lot of these kind of presentations. And WorldCity, the company I founded in 1998, we analyze monthly U.S. Census Bureau data at ustradenumbers.com, and we've published trade numbers products for more than 20 markets for more than 20 years. We could not have done this event without the support of Miami International Airport, our sponsor. And we also got support from 2 terrific organizations, the World Trade Center Miami and the Florida Custom Brokers and Ford Association. After I make my brief presentation, I'll introduce 2 terrific speakers we have lined up today. Gabriel Rodriguez is the president of A Customs Brokerage, and I'll have more of his bio when I introduce him later, as well as Jimmy Nares, who works at Miami-Dade Aviation Department, or MIA, in the business development, cargo development area. If at any point during the presentation today you have a question, there's a little Q&A box down there. Just click on that and put your question in there, and we'll try to get to it as quickly as we can. I'll be talking about each of the 3 major ports in South Florida in sections. The first one will be MIA, then I'll do PortMiami, then I'll do Port Everglades. Within each section, I'll have a poll question to test your knowledge and to sort of help us think about trade and how it affects our lives, as well as a section on the top trade partners, the top exports, the top imports, and then some of the areas where each of these ports ranks high nationally among the nation's airports, seaports, and border crossings. So with that said, let's get started. Our first poll question today is on MIA imports, and that question is this. This import is the only one to appear in the top 5 by both value and tonnage through October. Is it gold, fish fillets, or cell phones? And you should be able to see those and take your crack at that one. Is it gold, fish fillets, or cell phones? The only one to appear in the top 5 by value and tonnage. I'll give you just a minute to take your best shot at that one. And by the way, I should say, usually I make these questions a little easier today. I made them pretty tough because I think they tell some interesting stories, the poll questions themselves. I'll give you just another few seconds here to answer that. Gold, fish fillets, or cell phones? Okay, so I've ended the poll. I'm going to share those results with you. 56% said gold, about 19% said fish fillet, and 25% said cell phones, and cell phones, I should say, and related parts and equipment. We'll get to that answer in just a moment. But before we do, I'm going to look at some of the data for you here and show you some of the interesting statistics, okay? So this first one we're going to look at, this looks at MIA's trade just for the month of October, from October 2013 all the way to October 2021, okay? So this is all Census Bureau data that we buy from Census. They get it from Customs and Border, CBP, who is responsible for gathering that data. And then we make sense of it, or do our best, right? So what we can see here for MIA, comparing this October to the previous 8 Octobers, is that it's just a smidgen below the 2013 total. And I happen to know that in 2012 was the record year by value. So we'll talk about tonnage in a minute with Jimmy Nares. We'll talk about that. But by value, the total this year will be probably the the second or third best year ever. I don't think it'll quite top that 2012 total when gold was such a big factor in MIA's trade. So this is just the month of October, okay? And this next one looks year to date, and the most recent data is through October. That's why I'm showing you October. So this is the first 10 months of the year. This shows all airports, seaports, and border crossings. There's roughly 450 to 460 of those. And then it shows just the airports across the bottom. So as you can see, MIA ranks number 19 by value. And needless to say, most airports don't handle trade by tonnage like seaports. So airports tend not to rank very high there. But if you look at the airport, the bottom line, the airport line, it ranks 7 by value and 5 by weight. That tells you that the cargo that's handled at MIA is slightly heavier relative to other airports than valuable. That's what that distinction tells you there. Okay, and we'll get into that in a minute as well. So now let's take a look at the top trade partners. This is again by tonnage. What you can see there is 45% of the tonnage that moves through MIA, is moving through MIA this year, is 2 countries. And that's Colombia and Chile, okay? And then you throw in Brazil and Ecuador, you're at almost 2/3 of that trade. You're over 60% of the tonnage of that trade. Now we're gonna switch to value here. And the thing I would focus on here, first of all, the countries are Brazil, Colombia, and underneath my left shoulder there is Chile, and then Malaysia and Argentina. Look at the percentage gains, the bold-faced under year-to-date change, 26, 26, 22, 1,000% for Malaysia there, and 20%. These are the top 5 trade partners. And we'll talk about Malaysia, what's going on there in just a minute. As you'll see it show up in the, it's all on the import side. If you look at it there, you can see that. And again, if there's any questions, feel free to jump in at any time. I'm happy to pause and answer those questions. Let's look at MIA's exports to the world. This is again by tonnage. You got parts for heavy machinery, motor vehicle parts, computers, cell phones, and you got transmission shafts and so forth, gears. Those are about as heavy as you're gonna really see on a flight. Those are pretty heavy, bulky things. And that's by tonnage, what the top ones are. If you switch now to by value, you see a different type. You see civilian aircraft and parts, cell phones and parts, plasma and vaccines. MIA has become a very important player in the export of vaccines, largely to Latin America, as you would imagine, in the last few months in particular. And we'll talk about that more with Jimmy. Computers and computer chips. Look at the gain, by the way, in the plasma and vaccines, up 178.48% compared to this last year at this time. Big change. So let's now go to the imports, okay? And this is where we're gonna get the answer to our first poll question. Fresh cut flowers, fish fillets, fish, okay? Right there, you're talking basically 60% of the tonnage of MIA's imports. Asparagus is that purplish one, the fourth one at 4.8%. It's large, it says peppers, asparagus, and squash, but it's largely going to be asparagus from Peru. And then you got some strawberries and blueberries. That's largely going to be blueberries. And now let's look at, let's see which one of those repeats. Which one of those repeats among the top 5? That was the poll question. Computer chips, nope. Gold, nope. Return exports, no change. I won't spend too much time with that. Cell phones and parts, nope. And then there it is. There's the repeating item. Fish fillets up 32%, so ranked in the top 5 by both value and tonnage through October. So that's the answer to your first question. Let's now look at, we have some new social media graphics that we've created that are on our website to a certain level of subscribers to our data. And I'll show you our website in just a moment. This is the highest ranking exports by tonnage for the month of October. And this is where MIA ranks number 1 in this case. So ranks number 1 for the export by tonnage of computers, cell phones, civilian aircraft parts, tarpaulin, sails, awnings, and the like tents, as well as digital storage devices. That's on the export side. If we switch to the import side, we see that by value now, not tonnage, by value, MIA ranks number 1 for fish fillets, fresh cut flowers, fish, horses, and also the foliage you put around the flowers. So MIA is very important in a lot of ways, but there's some that where it ranks number 1. I'm going to do a quick screen share before I move on to Port Everglades to show you our website, so you can sort of see what that looks like. And this is our MIA page. Okay, and so as you can see, it's if you want to quickly get to some of our pages, you can go under the data button at the top of the screen. You click on airports, seaports, and you don't click. You scroll over airports, seaports, and border crossings. You roll over to unlocked, and these are all the pages that have a sponsor, so they're open to the general public. So it's a number of them in Texas, but within Miami, we've got both MIA and Port Everglades. So here is MIA's page, and here you see all the components. This is open to you. If it's most pages on our website are not open to except to subscribers. So this part is what you see. But if a page is open, either as you're a subscriber or if there's a sponsor to it, you see all this data. And with any of these, you can switch back and forth between value and tonnage. I think a lot of you know this. And you can change the time if you want from the year to date to month to whatever you would like there. Different level of subscriber. You can also do downloads of data by both value and tonnage. So there's a lot of data here. As I say, we upload 2.5 million plus pages every month. So, and then at the bottom, that's also quite helpful. And you can see then the relative value of the trade at MIA. So 57% are exports, 43% are imports. A 12-month look. And then here's a story that's auto-generated each month that says basically their trade at MIA is up 30% this year compared to last year. So big trade, big change there. And Port Everglades, you'll see similar sort of page. They're sponsored by Port Everglades and all that same type of information. So let me get back to where we were, and let's jump over now then to Port Miami. We'll go to that. So we'll go to our second poll question now. Oops, let me stop that sharing. I forgot to do that last time. And we'll go to our second question here, which is Port Miami. In this case, it's going to be exports. So which is the more valuable export from Port Miami through October? Is it motorboats and yachts? Is it passenger vehicles? Or is it cotton? Let's see what we got there. Most valuable export from Port Miami through October. And by most valuable, I mean by dollars, not by tonnage. So just in case that's confusing. I'll give you a few seconds to jump in with that one. And there's a good reason to think it could be any of those three. I could make the case for any one of those three. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds, see if who else wants to jump in. Okay, let's see what we got here. I'm going to share those results with you. And 28% said motorboats and yachts. Not a bad guess because both Port Miami and Port Everglades are very, they're basically, the yacht capitals of the world. And passenger vehicles, certainly going to be passenger vehicles that go to the Caribbean from here. And then cotton or cotton yarn certainly is going to be sent from here to Central America to come back as apparel. So we'll get to that answer in just a moment. Let me run through some of the data on Port Miami for you quickly. So here again, here's that same chart that I showed you for MIA, and this shows that Port Miami is on a record pace for the year, and it looks like it'll be the second record in 3 years. So by value, the trend line has been pretty good for the last 5 or 6 years at Port Miami. Now we'll look at the year-to-date figures, and it shows the ranking. Notice on the seaport line, the big difference between ranking by value and tonnage. It's flipped from what MIA was. And what this shows you is that what comes into Port Miami is, relative to other ports, more valuable than it is heavy. And the way to think about that is, if you think about ports like Port Houston and Port of New Orleans and some of those, they're doing a lot of very heavy bulk kind of cargo, like grains like soybeans and corn and wheat, and they're going to do oil and all those kind of things. So relative to the rest of some of the other ports, seaports around the country, Port Miami's trade is more valuable than it is heavy. Let's look at the top trade partners. Here are the top trade partners. You've got China by tonnage. You've got China, DR, Dominican Republic, Turkey, Honduras, and Italy. And by value, you've got Dominican Republic and China. They flop, and then Honduras, Peru, and Guatemala. And again, look at the percentage gains there. You got Honduras at 47%, Peru at 46%. So some really big gains as far as that goes. Now we're going to take a look at the exports. Again, this is by tonnage. You got scrap iron and steel. You got basically scrap paper and paperboard. You've got cotton yarn. You got passenger vehicles. Then you got aluminum waste and scrap. What you're seeing there with on the tonnage side with that scrap is some of what heads back to China from Port Miami. If we go now to the value of those things, here's the most valuable through October is passenger vehicles. And remember, the other two in that question I asked were motor vehicles, were motorboats and yachts, as well as cotton. And those are not in the top 5. Cotton yarn is, but passenger vehicles is the answer to that second question, which a slight majority of you did get right. But again, very tough question. So passenger vehicles are the most valuable export from Port Miami, largely going to the Caribbean from Port Miami. Let's look at the import side. There you have the top 5 are ceramic tiles and flags and paving tiles. You got granite and marble. You got furniture parts. You got natural waters, and that would include like carbonated waters, as well as peppers, asparagus, and squash. And again, in the case of Miami, that's largely going to be asparagus from Peru. On the value side, changes a little bit. You see some of that. What happens when you send that cotton yarn in Central America comes back as sweaters and T-shirts. Both of those showing significant gains, 63 and 53% respectively. Cigars and cigarettes is almost exclusively cigars coming, and almost exclusively coming from DR and Nicaragua. You got insulated wire and cable, which will tie into the construction business, as well as can tie into the automotive industry as well. Less so in this part of the country than some other parts, but and then you got shrimp. We all like our shrimp, right? And again, big gains in some of those imports. So let's look at some areas where Port Miami ranks #1 in the country. In the month of October, by tonnage, Port Miami ranked #1 for cotton yarn, for fruit and vegetable juices, for electric storage batteries. That category is increasingly looking at batteries for electric vehicles, but is a little bit broader than that. So it can be a number of things, as well as some chemical compounds, some sulfites, and then the cotton yarn, which is less than 85% cotton. Ranks #1 for all 5 of those. Now we'll look at the import side. Some familiar items here for many of you. This is imports by tonnage, again, just for the month of October. Peppers, in this case, asparagus coming from Peru, as I mentioned earlier. Those T-shirts, those cigars, green beans and peas and some other similar vegetables, as well as cassava, what we here call yuca, ranks #1 for all 5 of those imports. So now we're going to move on to Port Everglades, and that means it's time for another question for you guys. And this question is this. Which one country ranks among the top 5 for both Port Everglades and Port Miami by tonnage through October? One country ranked among the top 5 for both Port Everglades and Port Miami by tonnage through October. Brazil, China, or Turkey? One country ranked among the top 5 for both ports. And I'll give you a few more seconds to answer that question. And again, if you have any questions about anything, any of the data that I've talked about, feel free to jump in and ask it. I'll try to help you out with the answer if I know it. I'll give you just a few more minutes. Not a few more minutes, a few more seconds, excuse me. Not the SATs here, is it? Okay, I think most of you who want to answer have jumped in. Oh, and by the way, I should have said this from the beginning. These are anonymous. We have no idea who answers what. We're not going to be, we don't care and don't need to know, but I don't think anybody had any suspicion of that. So I'm going to end that poll and share the results. And 44% said Brazil, 56% said China, and nobody guessed Turkey. Nobody guessed Turkey. So we'll get to that answer in just a moment as we run through the Port Everglades data. Hold on here, let's see. There we go. Okay. So let's do this. Let's go to Port Everglades. The next page for Port Everglades is right here, I believe. Let's hope I'm right. Yeah, so here we go. Here's Port Everglades, looking really good, also like Port Miami. A little bit more staccato, I guess, in there in the up and downs there, but definitely a record year on the value of its trade at Port Everglades. Looks to be in the offing. Through the first 10 months, it looks very strong. A very similar story in the year-to-date rankings that you saw with PortMiami. And in fact, in the national rankings, they're often right next to each other, very close to each other in the rankings. But again, that same separation between value and tonnage that you saw with PortMiami, and that's just the nature of the trade that occurs here. Okay, so let's look at the top trade partners. We're going to start getting the answer to that question. So here are the top 5 by tonnage in October. You've got Turkey, Brazil, Honduras, Netherlands, and Guatemala. The one that's missing that was in the poll question is China. So now we know it's either Turkey or Brazil. So a majority guessed China, and that is not one of Port Everglades' top trade partners. And why is that? Port Miami's trade tends to be a little bit more east-west, and Port Everglades tends to still be a little more north-south. And so that's what's going on there. So you see Brazil here and Turkey, but you see Brazil here, the north-south, but you don't see the east-west as much. So the question is, which one of those two, Brazil or Turkey, was it in Port Miami? Let me see if I can go back and pop that one up successfully. And if I can, it'd be something of a miracle, to be quite honest. But here it is. There's no Brazil in the top 5 for Port Miami. So the correct answer was Turkey. It's the one country that appears in the top 5 for both of those. And we'll go back to there. And we'll talk about that in a little bit with our first speaker, Gabe Rodriguez, because that is largely a construction story, what's going on there. So now let's switch to the value of that trade: Dominican Republic, Honduras, Brazil, Chile, and Costa Rica. Again, still no China. But again, look at the big gains there, 49% with Honduras, just enormous gains. Now, again, we're comparing to COVID years, last year's COVID year. So these numbers are obviously going to be really strong this year. But overall, US trade, and as you saw at both of these 3 ports, if they're not at record levels, they're teetering at record levels, and US trade will top 4 trillion again this year and set a record again this year. So let's look at the export picture. By tonnage, we've got cotton yarn. Again, that's the yarn that goes to Central America, comes back as t-shirts and sweater. You got the passenger vehicles going to the Caribbean. You got gasoline. You got chicken and other poultry, and you got some synthetic yarn again for the apparel trade in Central America. And if you look by value, just like MIA, you got the passenger vehicles, you got computers, cotton yarn, motor vehicle parts, cell phones. Again, look at the very big gains there. Like in cotton yarn is up 60%, and cell phones and parts are up almost 81%. So really, really big gains on the export side. And now on the import side, year-to-date by tonnage, you've got gasoline, and you got basically the cement. Then you got some perishable items. You got bananas, plantains, and you got melons. And then you finally have some granite and marble. Again, you see some of that, the influence of construction in these top 5 by tonnage. If we look at value, here you see that apparel coming back. You see those t-shirts, you see those sweaters. Gasoline and other fuels for many, many years was the leading import by value into Port Everglades. When Venezuela became a problem, when their output of dropped so precipitously, that affected Port Everglades significantly. That shows you some of those years where the trade was going up and down, and then restrictions put on those imports also were a factor. Motorboats and yachts, there they are on the import side, and then some electrical supplies, so 1,000 volts or less. So let's look at some areas where Port Everglades ranks #1 in the nation. The exports by tonnage, it's uncoated paper for writing, synthetic yarn. You got your sweetened waters, you got paper cartons and office boxes and files and so forth, and then some caulking compounds. On the import side, again, by tonnage, and again, just for the month of October of this year, you've got ash and slag, you got motorboats and yachts, you got melons and papayas. Aluminum waste and scrap as an import is largely coming from Mexico and Costa Rica, of all places. And it's not 100% clear to me if that's being used locally in the construction trades or if it's actually being then shipped out to Asia. But my guess is it's being used locally. Then you have cabbage and cauliflower and kale that also ranks #1. Now, this is the time if you do have any questions or like me to go back and talk about anything in more detail, I can be glad to do so. I'll give you just a minute to make sure there are no questions. And if you don't have any questions, I'm going to ask Gabe Rodriguez to join me on camera here. Gabe is the president of a customs brokerage, as I mentioned earlier. He was recently appointed to a Federal Maritime Commission board, and he's hanging out with people from Walmart, DuPont, Cargill, IKEA, Amazon, so he's playing in the big leagues now, and we're proud to have him representing South Florida on that board, as well as customs brokers. He's a board member for the National Customs Brokers and Freight Forward Association, and president of the local one, the Florida Customs Brokers and Association. So Gabe, welcome to the discussion. Thank you for agreeing to participate.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks for having me, and good to see some of the participants there in the crowd. A lot of familiar names and faces.
Yeah, great. So, as I introduced you, one thing that I mentioned is that the associations you're part with, and this new FMC commission, I think is really terrific because what it does is it gives you some insights in how some of these bigger companies are thinking. So I've decided I'm going to let Gabe give us the answer, because he knows the answer to this question. What does 2022 look like? And just lay it out for us in real simple detail so we know how to live our lives next year, if you could.
Absolutely. So when you take one of those slides, and it's appropriate that we're in Christmas time, right? Take a little snow globe, shake it all up. That's what 2022 looks like. Honestly, it's which day of the week do you start off on? You get one side of the view, or you get the other side of the view. Some say it's going to be a strong year. Some say it's going to be a slow year. It's a little bit of a toss up. Funny enough, Monday I had that. I had an article that I was reading where things are going to slow down, and Tuesday I was listening in on the radio, and they're saying, hey, get ready, it's going to ramp up again. So there's so many factors that are going into it. But when you speak about the big box and the big boys and the big players, a lot of them are saying 2022 is going to repeat 2021 or be just as strong a year as 2021. There's so many factors that influence, though. I mean, whether it's the inflation we're currently seeing, what the Fed is going to do with rates, how that's going to affect the financial markets. We're getting into a midterm year. Political scene is ramping up, and that usually slows things down a little bit. The labor realignment, that's been, I think, everybody's issue for 2021. A lot of people jumping jobs, jumping careers, jumping positions. All that's, going to have its effect overall. My hope, is that the supply chain kind of flushes out a little bit, slows down just a bit. On a personal note, I've been thinking and saying here in the office that, post Chinese New Year, we should see a little bit of a slowdown. You do have issues in China, as well as production issues and whatnot, with energy crisis and whatnot. So there's just so many factors that it's impossible to predict. But I think overall we should see things kind of slow down just enough to hopefully let things flush through that supply chain system. Yeah. And keep it from a moderate to a strong year is really what I think is at the end of the day going to occur. We'll see what happens.
And when we talked earlier, you said this year for you has been off the charts, never been busier.
Absolutely.
Tell about that and how busy it has been, but also tell us about what a customs broker's primary lines of business are.
Yeah, so relating back to some of the stats that you were putting up there, and some of the countries that are the strongest importers over here, we do a lot of construction material, primarily in the flooring and tiles and stones and marbles and granites and all that kind of stuff, slabs. And that's that's been the focal point of our business for many years, and this year has been no less. I mean, we're seeing stuff coming in from all over the place. The places that you mentioned primarily, though, were China, Turkey, India, Spain, Italy. Definitely pointing to validating the statistics you're putting up there. A lot of containers of this material coming in, and that goes to, and we mentioned it earlier as well, and people have been talking about it for a while. You're pent up at home. You want to change up your bathroom. You want to change up that kitchen. The floor isn't to your liking anymore. You got a backyard. You want to build out a terrace. So a lot of that has been going on. It's the majority of what we do, a lot of tiles and stones, but also other building materials. So we do kitchen products. We have, an aluminum importer who's having a record year, does the frames for windows and doors and stuff like that. Furniture, definitely people changing up the furniture in their homes. So all those different types of products is our primary business, and it's, it aligns with the numbers that you're showing up there. It's what's coming in.
So here's a question that's, would you guess that scrap aluminum that's coming in is being repurposed and used here, or would you have no way of knowing?
It's not scrap. What's coming in, what we're bringing in is already aluminum profiles already done. Right. So my understanding is that the scrap here goes back out to China, and from China it's repurposed and then maybe shifted to other parts of the world where final production is done. Yeah. Any
questions for Gabe? Anybody have any questions for Gabe? We've got a an audience here, but they're not asking a lot of questions yet. So I tell you what, if there's no questions for Gabe, you're welcome to stay on the screen if you'd like, and I'll ask Jimmy to join us next. And let me get my and thank you very much for that, Gabe. That was very helpful. And let me get, where's Jimmy here? I gotta, so I can read his bio. Here we go. Sorry for the delay there. So Jimmy is the section chief for the aviation department at Miami-Dade Aviation Department. He's responsible for forming and implementing cargo development marketing programs in MIA. He specializes in, and here are the things we've been talking about today, e-commerce, pharmaceuticals, perishables, manufacturing products. And he serves as MAA's representative in the Pharma.Aero Association. And so Jimmy, welcome to the discussion today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, great. So you saw a lot of the numbers as well, and you heard Gabe talking about it. We're all very aware of in the world of the pandemic, it has really changed the way we handle what we're importing, what we're exporting, and so a lot of what's been moving through MIA has dealt with PPE and masks and gloves and things like that. But it's also been a lot of perishable products. So tell us a little bit of what you see in some of the carriers like UPS, FedEx, DHL. What kind of numbers are you seeing from those guys? What's going on in that space?
Thank you, Ken. Yes, we've seen a lot more perishables coming in, e-commerce, and as you mentioned, some of our top integrated carriers we're seeing a lot of growth in. The air cargo industry has been resilient throughout the pandemic. Global demand for air freight was down early on in 2020, but our airport, MIA, has fared very well, mainly due to the high presence of freighter or cargo-only airlines at our airport. In 2020, just to give you an indication, we had about 7,900 more cargo-only flights, which is about 15.5% higher than pre-pandemic 2019. Now in 2021, we're seeing that demand for air cargo capacity is at an all-time high. And part of the reason is, as you mentioned, we continue to have large movement of PPE, vaccines now that the distribution, globally is underway, and also fresh foods. I think more people are ordering perishable products. They're opting not to go out to restaurants, and they're choosing to purchase more fresh foods on their own. In terms of perishables, MIA accounted for 70% of all U.S. imports of perishables by air last year. So that continues to be very strong for us. You touched on e-commerce. Consumer habits have also changed during the pandemic. We see more e-commerce purchases taking place versus in-person retail purchasing. Some of our top integrated carriers, as I mentioned, these are the airlines that typically handle e-commerce. And we've seen UPS and DHL, for example, they had growth of 6.5% and 38% by volume in 2020. This growth that they were experiencing is continuing in 2021. They've had 9.4% and 35% growth respectively through October 2021 versus the same time frame in 2020. So e-commerce is booming. We're seeing it through our airport. And just, I'm sorry, Ken, I know you talk in terms of value many times. That's very important to us as well at the airport. But for us, tonnage is a little more important than volume, because that's what actually fills planes. And on that note, we did have a record year last year in terms of tonnage, 2.3 million US tons. But we're on pace this year to basically shatter that record by about 14%. Growth. We're expecting to reach about 2.67 million tons air freight this year. So expecting a very strong year, 2021.
Yeah, I don't think you mentioned, I hope I didn't miss it, but one of the distinctions of MIA is that relationship between freighter and belly cargo. And did you mention that? If I did, you mentioned, I apologize for not catching it, but that's also part of the MIA story, right?
Yes, that's we're fairly unique as an airport. Most airports account for most of their cargo by belly cargo, cargo that travels under the belly of passenger aircraft. And we're the exact opposite. About 80%, 82% of all of our cargo travels on freighter only or cargo only freighter airlines, and only about 18% is accounted on belly cargo. So we're fairly unique,
which proved to be very helpful during the pandemic, because
absolutely
it was not disrupted.
Absolutely. I think that's why, that's a reason why we actually had a lot of growth in 2020. We have 43 cargo-only airlines with direct
Think about
access.
that number. That's an amazing number, right?
Yeah. It's a large number, and those 43 airlines have direct routes to about 100 and just over 101 direct destinations. So that's why MIA was able to continue very strongly with our cargo operations despite the pandemic.
Yeah, and so one of the things I mentioned a little bit in the presentation by value, one of the biggest gaining was that category that included vaccines. And if my numbers are correct, the growth last year in that category was, I think, 5%, and year to date it's 11%. And for the month of October was 13%. It was really prescient of the airport to want to get involved in becoming a pharma hub. Why don't you talk a little bit about vaccines and the pharma hub and what that means to Miami?
Yes, thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. And yes, pharmaceuticals have been very strong for us as well. And again, I'll talk in terms of volumes. I looked at our data through October of this year, and we are at about 16.3 million kilograms of pharma, which has already surpassed our total pharma volume of 2020. We're expecting a record year for pharmaceuticals as well. I delved a little bit more into the subcategories of our larger pharma category, and it was no surprise. Vaccines for human medicine was a very large part of the growth so far this year. It almost increased fivefold in 2021 so far compared to pre-pandemic 2019. And again, that's vaccines for human medicine. So that's driving a lot of our growth in the pharmaceuticals category. A little bit about our history in terms of our pharma hub status. In 2015 or so, we started an effort to grow our pharma trade activities at the airport, and that an important part of that initiative was to develop a community of CEIV pharma certified logistics companies. It's a certification from IATA. And we have 5 companies that have achieved this certification now: Latam, Amerijet, Swissport, Kuehne+Nagel, and DHL Global Forwarding. With this certification, we now have a cluster of experts at the airport, experts at handling and transporting cold chain pharmaceuticals, and consequently, pharma shippers around the world see our airport as a viable and safe airport to ship their products through. So we have had a strong year for pharmaceuticals, and we expect that to continue in the future. And the 2 reasons for that: number one, because of our CIV Pharma airport community, and also number 2, our very extensive air route network with Latin America and the Caribbean region. That's mainly where our pharma and vaccine exports are destined. And we have 89 direct passenger and freighter destinations in the Latin American Caribbean region, including a total of 10 just with Brazil, which is our top trading partner. So we expect that trend, strong pharma exports, to continue in years to come.
And it matters so much, not only for Latin America's well-being and economy, but here in Miami, we have, 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 multinationals that are here to do business in the region. And if those people can't get back to traveling like they used to, it's going to hurt that business as well. It's going to hurt Miami as well as the companies themselves, because it depends on the multinational, but anywhere from 8 to 25% of their revenues are coming from the region globally. So MIA's role in getting those vaccines pushed through to the region is really, really critical and really, really matters. Well, now's the time if anybody has any questions to ask of either Gabe or Jimmy to jump in. And if you don't, then I think we're gonna call it a day, and thank both of our terrific speakers for their input today. Here we go. We got 2 questions. There we go. I missed them. There you go. I apologize. Okay, so here from Stanley. Excellent day, Dallas County. Okay, as you know, empty containers and truck chassis shortages are increasingly problematic with little relief in sight. Can your panelists provide any perspective on outlook on what effect these 2 factors will have both on air and ocean trade? Truck chassis, empty containers, and truck chassis shortages. That's probably a Gabe question there, huh?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that one. So that's actually a topic that we have kind of broached at the Federal Maritime Commission committee that we participating on. And I don't see so much of a shortage of containers and a shortage of chassis so much as a proper, misallocation of them. You head out to the West Coast and you go just outside the port, and there are trucking yards filled with empty containers sitting on chassis that aren't able to be utilized because they can't return them. It's a factor that I think the FMC is going to address, to have the carriers kind of ease that flow a little bit, and that will assist in that flow of trade. I think that's part of what I was saying earlier, in that hopefully this year there'll be a little bit of a flush out in the supply chain. So, reassessing that allocation and making sure that it goes through, the right channels, making sure that it goes right back into the actual trade rather than sitting in somebody's yard. I'll take a quick second, if you don't mind, to plug the TSA, the Florida Custom Brokers and Forwarders conference upcoming next year, their trade summit, February 22, 23, 24. And the golf tournament at the end of it, we're going to be addressing issues just like this, right? The congestion, visibility, automation, how those different factors affect the supply chain and make the supply chain more efficient, how regulation pops into it. We've got some great minds from around the country coming into it, yourself included. So just wanted to take that quick second to plug that.
Good. And is there a website there that we should put in our chat for you?
There is. I'll pop it up and I'll put it in there myself now.
Or Tatiana can do it. It's probably fcbf.org.
Yeah, I think it's fcbf.com/conference, I believe is what it is.
Okay, great. And I got a question from Wilson here for Jimmy. Let me see if I can get this question right. From place, new equipment assigned to fly this value market or existing trade route. I'm not quite sure I understand this question. Are Pharma flights new equipment assigned to fly this value market or existing trade route? I'm not sure what that question means. He asked a similar question, a related question about belly versus charter and any effect on flowers or perishables. Was because of the lack of passenger flights for so long. Has that affected? And by the way, do you know what level of passenger traffic on the international is back? Or passenger flights, I should say.
Yeah, it's international is still lagging a little bit behind domestic, but our passenger numbers have come back very strong. Actually, November, we had a record month since the pandemic began. We were averaging more daily passengers during the month of November than since the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
Now, you mentioned charter flights. Charter flights grew.
I should have said freighter. I apologize, but go ahead.
No. Charter, actually, charter is the right term, I think. When passenger flights dried up basically early on in the pandemic, as there were, the flights were grounded and there were lockdowns all around the world. Charter flights took on, a very important role, and there were a significant increase in charter flights. We still have a lot of charter flights at the airport, but as I mentioned, passenger flights have come back very strong. So belly cargo capacity has come back strong for us in a large way. And that is also going to help fuel us to this record year that we're going to have for cargo. But yes, international passengers has been lagging a little bit, but again,
it puts a little more pressure on the freighters to carry that cargo. No, I think that's sort of the nut of the question. Is it making availability a little tougher for some of the perishables? Yeah, no, our perishables have been very strong, and so it's the bulk of our perishables are carried on freighters. And so that has not really been affected as much as some of the other cargo that perhaps would have been carried on belly cargo. Okay, and Wilson, if you want to try to restate that second one so I can answer it, ask it better, I'll be glad to do so. But here's a question from Diego Rodriguez: with the tremendous growth of e-comm in Latin America in 2020 and 2021, do you see an increase in e-comm imports from the region to the U.S., or is it primarily outbound e-comm packages to LATAM? Do you guys have a sense of that? Either one of you, Jimmy, maybe? You have a sense of which way that the e-commerce is going? I'm going to presume it's going southbound. Yeah, for us, it's bi-directional, but yeah, we're seeing more going southbound, and a lot of it is going to Brazil. And I'll take the opportunity to plug. We have a Brazilian pre-clearance program. Our airport worked with the government of Brazil to have a program in which transshipment of e-commerce products can be pre-cleared in Miami. And then when they arrive in Brazil, they enter as domestic cargo, and that really speeds up the time
that products can reach Brazil. And of course, when we're talking e-commerce, that's very, speed and time is is critical for, for e-commerce.
Terrific. Okay, so I think we've answered most of the questions. It was a good presentation. Trains are almost running on time here. It's 11:46, so we're doing a pretty good job there too. Once again, I want to thank our sponsor MIA for supporting these quarterly webinars. And by the way, they've signed on to support another year of them. Thank you for that. And then the World Trade Center and FCBF are supporting sponsors. Thanks for that. And I urge all of you who are on this call to, if you're not involved with those organizations, to think about it. If you need to reach us at any point, you can call us on the phone. They're just too small to read, probably number there, 305-441-2244. Plus my email is kroberts@worldcityweb or ustradenumbers.com. And we're all over LinkedIn, Twitter, and so forth. So thank you to Jimmy Nares, Gabe Rodriguez, and my capable assistant, Tatiana, who's in the background helping with this. And I wish all of you a great weekend. And if I don't probably won't see most of you until the new year. So happy holidays and best wishes for the new year. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye now.
Okay.